All right, here's section 2. This time we're going to take a look at the brain, our control center. Our main idea: the human brain has many parts that work together to coordinate body movement, create thought and emotions, and shape behaviors. Our 4 reading focus questions: what were some of the early beliefs about the brain? What are the parts of the brain and how do they function? How is the cerebral cortex divided? And which methods do scientists use to study the brain? Some early beliefs about the brain. In ancient times, people did not attribute human psychological processes such as thinking to the working of the brain. Instead, people widely believed that the body was inhabited by souls or demons. Ancient Egyptians believed that a little person dwelled within the skull and regulated behavior. The Greek philosopher Aristotle thought that the soul resided in the heart, but today we recognize that the mind or consciousness dwells within the brain. And already we have our first reading check. Sequence: how have ideas about the human brain changed over time? So looking at the parts of the brain, there are 3 major sections: the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. The hindbrain, that is consisting of 3 major parts. They have the medulla, which is involved in heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing. The pons regulates body movement, attention, sleep, and alertness, and the cerebellum is involved in balance and coordination. Areas within the midbrain are involved in vision and hearing. It contains part of the reticular activating system, which is important for attention, sleep, arousal, and alertness. The forebrain has quite a few parts. The thalamus serves as a relay station for sensory stimulation. The hypothalamus is vital to the regulation of body temperature, the storage of nutrients, and various aspects of motivation and emotion. It is also involved in hunger, thirst, sexual behavior, caring for offspring, and aggression. The limbic system is involved in learning and memory, emotion, hunger, sex, and aggression. The cerebrum makes up about 70% of the brain's weight and is where most conscious and intellectual activities take place. The cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the brain. It's the part that thinks, and it also deals with memory, language, emotions, complex motor skills, perception, and more. And here we go, parts of the brain. We have the hindbrain, which has the cerebellum, the pons, the medulla, the midbrain right in here, and then the forebrain, the cerebral cortex, the corpus callosum, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland. Sorry, it's not an interactive. And then looking over at details of the brain, we have the sensory and motor areas of the brain. The temporal lobe, areas with vision, occipital lobe, parietal lobe, the primary somasensory cortex, the primary motor cortex, and the frontal lobe. Reading check number 2. How do the functions of the midbrain and forebrain differ? The cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex has a left side and a right side. Each side is called a hemisphere. The corpus callosum is the structure that connects the 2 hemispheres. Information received by one side of the body is transmitted to the opposite hemisphere of the brain. And each hemisphere is divided into 4 parts: the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. Some interesting brain facts. Neurons create and send more messages than all the phones in the entire world. Combined, the neuron creates enough electricity to power a 10-watt light bulb. Sensory neurons send information to the brain at a speed of more than 150 miles per hour. Motor neurons relay information at a speed of more than 200 miles per hour. The adult human brain weighs about 3 pounds, about the same as your textbook, and it contains about 100 billion neurons. If the cerebral cortex was unfolded, it would cover a typical classroom desk. The surface area of the cerebral cortex is large enough to hold more than 10 billion neurons. The average human brain is about 75% water, and during the first month of life, the number of synapses in an infant's brain increases from 50 trillion to 1 quadrillion. Alright, so looking at some activities that go on in your brain. For senses and motor behavior, the occipital lobe is the primary visual area of the cerebral cortex. The temporal lobe is the hearing or auditory area of the cerebral cortex. Messages received from the skin's sensory receptors are projected to the sensory cortex in the parietal lobe, and these sensations include warmth, cold, touch, and pain. The association areas of the cerebral cortex shape information into something meaningful. The association areas in the frontal lobes function as the brain's executive center. Association areas provide the core of the working memory. The frontal region of the brain thus retrieves visual, auditory, and other kinds of memories. Other association areas make possible the psychological functions of language. For nearly all right-handed people, language functions are based in the left hemisphere. Language functions are also based in the left hemisphere of about 2 out of 3 left-handed people. Wernicke's area connects sounds and sights. When this area is damaged, people find it difficult to understand speech. Broca's area is involved in speech. When this area is damaged, people speak slowly and use simple sentences. The left hemisphere is usually more involved in logic, problem solving, and mathematical computation. The right hemisphere is more concerned with imagination, art, feelings, and spatial relations. Split brain operations have taught psychologists much of what they know about left and right hemisphere functioning, although there has been quite a few studies done within the last 10 years that say that left and right brains usually are not associated with just these areas that you can cross over. And our next reading check: what are the main functions of each part of the cerebral cortex? Methods of studying the brain. You can learn about the brain from accidents. Researchers are able to learn how the brain is related to psychological functions through the study of brain damage due to accidents. By lesions, scientists can study a brain by cutting, removing, or destroying parts of it. This method is used on laboratory animals. Electrical stimulation of the brain has shown that specific areas are associated with specific types of sensations, but it's not a reliable research tool. The electroencephalogram, or EEG, is a device that records electrical activity of the brain. EEG readings can help diagnose certain psychological disorders and to help locate tumors. And brain imaging can provide information about brain damage, cancers, and difficult surgeries. Brain imaging techniques include CAT scans, MRI scans, PET scans, and fMRI scans. Your next reading check: how does the information researchers gain from accidents compare to brain imaging techniques? And then section 2, at a glance. The brain is composed of 3 major sections: the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. The cerebral cortex is the part of the brain that controls thinking, memory, language, emotions, complex motor functions, perceptions, and much more. And that's it for section 2, the brain, our control center.